Our Thursday, July 6, 2023 regular meeting of the school committee. We have just returned from an executive session, and I would invite those who are in the studio to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so just so that people know, we do have two members who are participating remotely, both Amanda and Adam, and just for people who are here in the studio or at home, this meeting is being recorded. We would start normally with public comments. I do not believe there is anybody here for public comment. So then we can go into recognitions. Does anybody have a recognition tonight? Okay, then that brings us into reports. All right, Vera?
As soon as Bobby gets me set up, we will jump right into that superintendent's report.
Oh, I think I have to let him do this. See if I can get that again. All right, and there we go.
All right, thank you. So this is the superintendent's report for July 6, 2023. I'm hoping that everyone's summer is off to a great start and everyone had a lovely Independence Day. Just a very quick enrollment update, and as you know, at this time of year, we've always got that strange influx thing happening with enrollment because we have some students who will be leaving the district, we have students who are newly registering to the district. We have kindergarten that will start enrolling, and those enrollments are sort of trickling in. And so I'll just like to let you know where we are right now. So we've had two. And Mrs. DeBow is basing that on kindergarten screening numbers. So we do need for parents to get into that portal and start registering. But you can sort of see here also that we have a big number of registrants in grade 6, big number in grade 9. That very frequently happens because people tend to move when their kids are, at kind of one of those entry places to a new school. We have also lost 16 ninth graders, and very often that happens because they're going to places like Keefe Tech or they've just made a different high school decision. So the numbers do tell a little bit of a story. If we take this entire current enrollment, which is where we are today, we are at 4,152 students without the integrated preschool. If we add in the number of kids we have registered for integrated preschool right now, which is 85, that number will obviously change significantly. We're at 4,237 students. That's about 77 over the number we budgeted for, just so everyone knows. And so if we're 77 over the number that we budgeted for, you can imagine that that number is going to go up pretty significantly when the kindergarten registrations start coming in. As the year progresses, lots of parents will start, getting, oh, it's August, we need to enroll our kids in school. And obviously the integrated preschool will go up. I think we ended the year with about 115 kids.
Yes.
Yeah, in integrated preschool, so that number will change. The Elmwood School project, I just thought I would share some cost information, and I'm sharing it because I know people have lots of questions, and I don't have lots of answers here, but I think I have some things that will be illuminating. So everyone has heard that number, 174 million, and we just want to make sure that people know that that's an estimated number, and it's really a top number that Elmwood project could cost. If all of the high-end construction materials were chosen, if none of the design elements had not been altered in any way, but the ESBC2 has really been working hard for a very long time to make some cost-saving decisions. Just as an example, at the June 28th ESBC2 meeting, the ESBC2 made some decisions around interior materials, and that resulted in about a $400,000 savings over the estimated cost of construction. And then they made another decision to utilize a general contractor, which will result in saving millions at the funding request, and there's potential for more savings at the bidding stage. So that's all good news. Just trying to kind of capture the things that they have done in an effort to bring down costs. I know a lot of people have had questions about the site selection, but that Hayden Row site selection is the most inexpensive, or I guess most cost-effective decision. We have eliminated the Family Resource Center, and I think that was about $750,000. Marathon has one, the new Elmwood replacement will not. In terms of HVAC, there are lots of reimbursements, so you probably don't see that number up front. But in terms of HVAC and mechanical systems, I think that they've made some really wise choices, and they're very green choices. But there's still an opportunity now, if we saw the upfront costs and they were pretty significant, we could say, all right, let's go with something just a little bit less green. So there's still a little bit of wiggle room in that regard. The interior materials we've already talked about. The general contractor we've already talked about. We have reduced the number of outdoor learning spaces. And maybe in this next column, you'll see, really how hard people are working on this. So in terms of window to wall ratios, the more glass you have, the more expensive it is. So if you position the windows in just the right place, you can actually use smaller windows, get a lot of natural light in there, and you wouldn't really know the difference. So there's a savings there. Reducing the amount of pavement on the site, reducing the amount of tree clearing that would be required, simplifying the building shape and the efficiencies. There have been places where we've just removed corners. And corners are expensive, and so the more of them you remove, the less expensive the building becomes. And reducing the size of some of our playing fields. So just wanted people to see that we're working hard on the building. Wednesday evening, July 18th, there will be a virtual public forum. We're hoping that people will tune in, and that link will be sent out to families several times with lots of reminders. In terms of district-wide planning, this is another question that kind of came up on the school committee listening tour. So people have said, do you really need to replace the Elmwood School? The answer to that question is yes. The Elmwood School is at its end of life, and the school's enrollment is really at the building's as-built enrollment. So we had, as you can see on this slide, a district-wide study done, and at the Elmwood grade 2-3 level, the as-built enrollment is about 650 kids. That number's a little bit dated because this study was done a few months ago, but we are right there at the enrollment number, and the projected enrollment for Elmwood is to go to 774. So people will say, do you really need to do that addition at the Hopkins School? The answer to that one might even be more yes right now than any other building, and I say that because the as-built square footage at Hopkins accommodates 628 kids, and the current enrollment is at 662. So Hopkins is truly bursting at the seams. And it really would not matter if we had a 4-5 school there or a 5-6 school there. Either way, we're projected to have 802 or 803 students in grades 4-5 or 5-6. So we really need that addition at Hopkins. People will say, do you really need that middle school addition information? At this point in time, the answer to that question is not yes. So one thing that we know about that is that we've suggested that could happen down the line. We don't know if we're going to need that or not. The Hopkins addition, if you pull out grade 6 out of the middle school, is really going to be quite helpful. So why do we say that? If we take a look at the Hopkins enrollment, say it stays a 4-5, it's projected to go to 802 students. You're never going to get 802 students in that building where the as-built enrollment is 628. So we put an addition on Hopkins and we move grade 6 into Hopkins. If you look at the as-built enrollment for the middle school, it's 1,116 students. Current enrollment is really closer to about 990 right now. Just because there have been a couple of months that have elapsed. But the projected enrollment there is 1,198. So if you pull out 300 kids from that number, you're really only at 898 students in grades 6, 7, and 8. I'm sorry, grades 7 and 8. This gives you a lot of free space. Now the high school is projected to go from 1,250 to almost 1,500. So you're going to pick up 250 kids, but you've pulled 300 out of here. The combined numbers, 1,198 and 1,498, get you to 2,396. And if you take a look at these two numbers, you'll see that you're not going to be bursting at the seams, but we have to remember that some of those middle school classrooms may need to be modified a little bit to accommodate high school courses. But at this point in time, it feels like we're opening up some space. So I don't want people to be saying, and then the next thing coming down the pike will be a middle school, high school renovation. It might need to happen, but we don't know that. We're not there right now.
So that, if I'm following correctly, at some point, 6th grade may move down to Hopkins.
Yes.
Okay. And some high school courses may come over to the middle school. Now, would those be 9th grade courses?
It's likely that it would be, but that decision hasn't been made.
Okay, because then would you not be into that horrible problem that often occurs when you put 7, 8, 9 together because of the vast difference between an 8th grader and a 9th grader?
I think the way the middle school is laid out, so if you take a look
Okay, you
at the
could
shape
put-
of it, if you're using only that left-hand corridor that comes right down the side, that runs parallel to the high school.
Okay.
So really, if 9th graders were going in and using that space, there really wouldn't be a need for them to kind of move
mix.
through and interact, yes.
Okay.
I mean, not that I don't think it wouldn't happen, because, you know,
But
kids
there
make
would
things
be
happen
more-
that they want to happen.
Yeah, but there'd be more of a physical barrier in a sense.
There's a nice physical break.
Yeah, okay. Because I had thought about that late at some other point. Okay.
Would we be able to move those 9th graders over without building like I know we had talked about a connector, either connecting hallway or connecting the two buildings. Could we do that without having to build that? Or do you think that that's necessary?
If you look at the high school over in that sort of technology engineering area,
Yeah.
and then you take a look at that corridor I was just referencing at
Right.
the middle school, there may only be 20 feet. The
Yeah,
kids would
they're
have to walk
close.
outdoors. So, I mean,
God
at best,
forbid.
you might want to have a
Really
canopy for rainy days, but yes, you could move kids from those two
I can give
buildings.
you one of our party tents.
That's exactly what we would be looking for.
Okay, you can have it.
So this has become a big piece of conversation, I think, in the
Yeah,
community.
sure.
And you know,
Right.
looking at not just the cost of Elmwood and the cost of Hopkins, but looking at some of these other projects. And my fear is that people get scared when they look at these projects that might not be happening at that point. And I worry that is going to detract from the votes for the two projects that are most important to us.
Right.
And I wonder if it might make sense for the school committee to bring back kind of what we're looking at for our 5-year capital plan in terms of what we're definitively going to do, or what we're definitively hoping to be able to do, and take an affirmative vote on that in a way that would signal differently to people who might otherwise vote against the Elmwood and/or Hopkins project down the road.
Yes, I think that's really smart.
We have that
Yeah.
keep coming up, right?
It-
Like
it
how do we
does,
know
right.
that once we build Elmwood that we're not going to be like, oh, do
Right.
we have to do this? No, we have to do that. right?
And people start throwing around bigger numbers that
Right.
they think are then
That are made up.
attached. Right. That somebody asked me how we were spending $300 million on
Like we
the
are?
Elmwood School, and I said, okay, I don't know where you got that number, but we're not.
That's a big number.
But I think it's a lot of the misinformation going around
Yeah.
about what's actually
Right.
in the pipeline to be done.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, so maybe this is helpful as well.
This is.
So people have said, do you need a new central office? And the answer to that is really no. I mean, we're okay where we are, for sure. Additional preschool space, the answer to that one has to be maybe, because it's a special education program, so the numbers of students enrolled in that program, that is what dictates our needs. Right now, they occupy a lot of space at the Marathon School, and help me, Lauren, when you opened that building, were there only 4 preschool classrooms?
4 classrooms, but 6 programs, because some are morning and afternoon. So now they're taking up 6 physical spaces, the family resource and the health room.
Yes, so even when you put on your new addition,
Yeah.
the new addition just really brings you back to equilibrium, so to
We-
speak.
The health room that was taken over by that will always be a preschool room. But the family resource room will be able to
Go
go
back.
back, so that we're thrilled to be able to have that space back.
Yes. So really, if you when you go back to this slide, oops, right there, and you look at the projected enrollment for Marathon at 779, if the integrated preschool was no longer housed at Marathon, there would be no need for an addition. But then the question is, where would the integrated preschool go? So that's a question we don't have an answer to right now. All right, here's just some kids and awesome stuff. Marjorie Billiter, who is the advisor to HOSA, just did their International Leadership Conference in Dallas, Texas. I know you all approved that some time ago, so 19 students have gone and returned. And so I thought I would just highlight for you some of the big successes that we had there. One of the things Marjorie shared with me is that these presentations, the 50-minute workshops, those are typically done in that setting by adults, rarely done by kids. And we had 2 student presentations there. Sri Lakshmi Venkatesan and Mandita Romesh did Investigating Somnipathy and the Influence of Adolescent Sleep. And then Sri Lakshmi did one alone, the Systemic Institutionalized Inequities of Neurological Care. So amazing things by our kids there. We had a couple of awards. There's the Barbara James Service Award for community service, and Renee Gowda had 300 hours, and Sri Lakshmi had 200 hours. And then a top 20 award went to Kaiser Rangwala and Jake Dole and Shariah Patney, and their presentation was EchoView, a handheld at-home fetal health monitoring device, something that they had created themselves. So it's almost like a science fair project for HOSA. So pretty amazing things our kids are doing, totally stand out, and thank you to Marjorie for bringing them all the way to Dallas, Texas, and back safely. Just some nice pictures that she sent to me of the kids at the conference, looking pretty sharp. We have a new assistant principal at the Hopkins School, which is very exciting. Our new assistant principal is Tanya Lamoureux. She had been an assistant principal in Franklin for a while, and then she and her family moved to Florida, and they have decided to return to Massachusetts, and so she's going to be working with us at Hopkins. Our slide from Mr. Cotter says, our hiring team was impressed by Ms. Lamoureux's leadership qualities and her commitment to educating all students in the area of character development and social emotional growth. Ms. Lamoureux lives in Blackstone with her husband and 3 children. She spends her free time cheering on her kids at hockey, gymnastics, soccer, and basketball events. They also enjoy skiing and camping as a family. Please join us in welcoming Ms. Lamoureux. And then, this is a really interesting coincidental thing that has happened. So you'll remember, I think at our last meeting, Mr. Lebrad did a presentation on computer science and where we sort of stand as a district in bringing that programming to kids. And then just the other day in the commissioner's newsletter, he indicated that there's an opportunity for districts to apply for the Computer Science Engage grant, which we will be doing. I think when DESE does something like this, they typically do a good job. They walk you through the entire process. They help you make decisions. They help you train your teachers. So this particular grant would help you to create an implementation plan for an equity-driven, high-quality computer science education pathway, to identify any issues of capacity, access, participation, and engagement, and seek solutions in order to increase participation in computer science courses for all kids, to support our teachers in learning computer science skills and using high-quality curriculum that aligns with our standards and challenges students at the grade level, and to engage students in grade level challenging and fun computer science coursework. If we were successful, we would build a district team. The areas of responsibility, you would engage in vision setting for the district. There would have to be modifications, or maybe have to become modifications to schedules. They would provide funding for our staff to write the curriculum for PD and for devices. They would work on teacher capacity building, and we would get coaching in PD at the elementary levels. We would have to determine if we wanted to make computer science a local high school graduation requirement, and then you'd bring in other subject area leaders, people in digital literacy and computer science. So these are the folks who would be involved. Our district leader, building administrators and digital literacy and computer science teachers. So that's pretty exciting. And that's all I have for you.
That's all.
Lots of stuff. I know. I was thinking, it's July and there's a lot going on.
There is a lot going on. So I'm going to just see if Amanda and or Adam have anything that you guys want to ask or comment on before. You guys have anything?
Nancy, you know I have to say that I am thrilled about CS. You know, my comments at the curriculum presentation, I strongly feel this is lost state, and certainly in Hopkinton. I think it's an equity issue. I'm thrilled. If there's anything that you need from a volunteer parent, I will just raise my hand, but also from school committee. I'm very, very excited about the grant. I wish us very good luck in applying for this. So thank you.
I was thinking
And
of you.
I would just echo those comments.
Anybody else have any questions or comments on any of it?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It was a lot. I may come back with things peppered at you down the road, but for now I'm good.
It's in the car when I drive.
I like all the happiness in it.
Yeah, there's a lot of good news there.
Yeah.
That's good. All right. Then I will go into the school committee chair report to say that payroll warrants S23025, S23026, and S23BAL have been approved. Warrants 23-069S, 23-070S, 23-071S, 23-072S, 23-073 Elmwood, 23-073 Hopkins, and 23-075S have all been approved. So that is all I have on that. Do people have liaison reports that you would like to share? Anybody? Okay. I did go to the ESBC2 meeting, and most of which you already had said, but really continue to be impressed with how this committee is working with the professionals to bring down the costs that the going with the general contractor, as you had mentioned, is a millions of dollars savings, could be over $10 million depending on kind of how it goes out to bid, but it really was
Can I ask, what's the alternative? Is there like specialized contractors for
Yep.
schools, and those just cost more because it's
So a construction manager at risk, the CM at risk, is a different process, and that's actually what we used at Marathon. So that was one choice. The general contractor, and I'm going to do not as good a job at explaining this as either one of you would.
Sorry.
But that's okay. With the general contractor, we do a design up front. It's a more prescribed process, whereas the other one, the construction manager at risk, is more of a collaborative approach.
Okay.
Do you want to, I'm looking at you, Susan, because you were there at the meeting, because I know you know way more about this than I do.
Sounds kind of tricky, a construction manager at risk.
like, I wasn't sure if it's like, if you call something wedding related, it costs way more than if you just say, like, I want it for my birthday. Or I didn't know if it's like school related. It's more
Yeah, no,
expensive.
so they're two different avenues of bringing on somebody who is going to watch over your construction. So the construction manager at risk comes on board now and is part of the design process. So as the building is being designed, and you have the layers, you have electrical, you have mechanical, you have plumbing, window to wall ratio, all that.
Yeah.
They're also watching because they're the ones that are actually going to build it.
Right.
When you go, and so that costs more because the team is brought on earlier in the process. When you go to the design bid build, that means that your set of designs need to be as flushed out as possible. So you want them, this is where more of it falls on our designer and more of it falls on the project manager to make sure that when we put it out to bid, that bid set is as perfect as possible. And then that general contractor takes the bid set and builds that.
Okay.
So sometimes the construction manager at risk has less change orders as the process is going on, and sometimes not. So, but that's why it costs more.
Thank you. Thank you. That was very clear. Thank you.
The committee's been very aware of just the fiduciary responsibility and the
Sounds
worrying about the responsibility to the taxpayers.
It
And
has been at the forefront of every conversation that they've had from my students.
so that was it for my liaison reports.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask that maybe we take out of order to go down to the school-based therapy dog, because I'm thinking that might be why Mrs. Dubose is
That
here.
is why Mrs. Dubose is here.
So why don't you come on up?
I love it.
So this is the infamous Mrs. DeBose.
This is, yes.
I hear wonderful.
You
things.
could have had a comfy chair.
It's positives.
That's wonderful. That's what we aim for. That's what we aim for. So thank you for having me tonight.
Thanks for coming.
And I'm here with, what I think is some good news to share and request. And I'm coming to seek approval for a therapy dog, Toby, to be part of our marathon community. We have a new adjustment counselor joining our staff this fall. His name is Justin Lowwater, and he has a certified therapy dog. The process involved in having your dog become a certified therapy dog is dog obedience school, you have dog therapy dog certification classes, up to date with medical vaccinations. The dog is insured, it maintains the certifications, and then you are able to be, so it's a process, it's months long, and then you have to maintain that certification. He is certified through Bright Spot Therapy Dogs Incorporated. That is a registered 501(c) nonprofit organization that's dedicated to placing well-trained certified therapy dog teams in meaningful programs. And Mr. Lowwater wrote a statement, so I'm going to read it to you, just so you get a little sense of him. To whom it may concern, I am writing to request that Hopkinton Public Schools begin the process for approving my therapy dog, Toby, to be allowed to join me at Marathon Elementary School starting in the fall of 2023. Toby is a mixed breed dog who was adopted by my family in May 2020. He and I were certified as a therapy dog team in 2021, and he began joining me at what was his current school, Lincoln Street School in Northborough, in early 2022. He has become an integral part of the school community as he has supported students in various capacities. While his school time was initially focused on students in a therapeutic program, he quickly became incorporated into many different areas of the school experience for their K-5 school. He provided documentation if we need, copy the insurance binder. Liberty Mutual has been in my head because that is their carrier. But, the vaccinations, I have all of that documentation if needed. And he just said, thank you for your consideration. Justin did share with me that when he left that school, it was sad, but he thinks people were more sad the dog was leaving. So just something about therapy dogs. They've been called miracle workers because of their calming effect on students and teachers. They help everything from trauma to reading intervention to a positive school climate, and benefits for children that have identified needs and not. Justin did visit us at our June faculty meeting. We tried to plan something of us coming together because we can't fit in one place. So our June faculty meeting was sort of a social opportunity for us to enjoy each other's company, and he brought Toby, and it was wonderful to see him interacting with staff and just the impact on even adults that the dog had. Now, Toby, he's not a service dog, so I'll just share a little bit about that. Service dogs are under ADA, giving them public access rights. Therapy dog is trained to provide affection and comfort to people in hospitals, retirement homes, schools, nursing homes, disaster areas. We'd like to think we're the school, not the disaster area, but we will benefit just as well. And while service dogs are dedicated to their specific owner, therapy dogs have a much broader role to helping people feel and stay calm. And while working, and when Toby visited us, he wears a Bright Spots therapy vest. So it's clear he's working right now. So that is my
Toby or
request.
or the
The dog would wear the vest.
Okay.
So then it's, I mean, we have signs at our school that talk about, you know, don't walk your dog while we're at school, all those health signs, because sometimes people like to have their dogs around school property, and that is a bit of a challenge. So this lets you know that this dog is certified, appropriate to be here, not just someone's, like my dog will not come to school. He would not be a good therapy dog. You know, love him dearly, but yes, yes. So I'm not sure if you have any questions or thoughts about this.
I love it.
I think it's
Yeah.
fabulous.
They were
Every school should have one.
Well, we know the high school has one.
They had it at the RAD presentation that I went to. It was incredible.
And we have Rebel visits us when Rebel is able. Rebel is a therapy dog that is in town, and Rebel's been visiting us since she was a puppy. We know that Rebel has some health needs. She was able to stay with us this year visiting classes, but it's when we have our population, as you saw, it's a little visit because we're spreading that across all of the classrooms. So this would just, you know, increase that opportunity for all to experience that.
Adam and Amanda, did you guys have anything?
Just a comment. I mean, we've had therapy dogs at the hospital for quite a while in different capacities, and it's always been an amazingly positive experience. You know, and particularly in my area of behavioral health, it's just it's almost like somebody flips on a switch when the dogs come on the floor. And it's just I'm fully in with the therapy dogs.
And I would send something out to the marathon community sharing that we had the dog in case someone wanted to opt out. Or, you know, typically we know of children's health needs, but if there was something that we were not aware of, so that families would have that option if they needed to.
I think this is an exciting opportunity. I wish that we could have the therapy dog here at the school committee sometimes.
I thought that might be presumptuous for me.
Bring Wallace. I think.
We could come at a future time.
Oh, yes.
Please.
That would be lovely.
Okay.
I think it's a great opportunity for the school and for the kids.
Especially the little guys.
Yeah.
Right?
You know, because, you know, everyone thinks, oh, they're so wonderful, they're so cute, but they have challenges, you know, that I think it would help children calm. At times we do have behavioral challenges. We have children experiencing changes in their families or just their home life, and I think it would be a great support to them.
Just a snuggle.
Yep, and sometimes you just sit and read with the dog or just sit,
That's
you
a
know.
program from where I came from was very
That's what Rebel
effective.
does.
Rebel goes
Yes,
to the
that goes to the
library
library.
too.
My
Yeah.
kids have read to Rebel at the library, and they love it.
Sorry.
They're like, read to
go
me.
ahead.
That's fun. Read
Yep. Sorry, Amanda.
Whatever.
Go ahead.
Sorry. No, just a quick. You know, I love the therapy dog program that we have in the upper grades. I think the answer is, but I have to ask: is there a cost associated to taking this program? I saw volunteer on the certificate, so I just wanted to check.
So Mr. Lowwater insures Toby, so there is not a cost to the district. And he's already completed the program, so it's not as if you're supporting the initiation of someone becoming a therapy team, that they are already an established team and they maintain the insurance for Toby.
Yeah, all of that documentation is in your school committee folder. It's just not in the public packet because
Right.
it was such personal.
Well, right, I was blacking off their names and their phone numbers, you know, on their riders and all of that. Yes. So it would not be a cost to the district.
Maybe a milk bone. Budget or something.
Oh, that would be, treat budget.
Oh, I think it will be a cost to the principal.
Yeah.
Snacks to everyone.
I do.
If you need.
Okay.
So I then would seek a motion to approve therapy dog Toby to accompany Justin Lowwater at Marathon School.
I so move.
Motion by Susan. Is there a second?
A second.
Second by Holly. We'll do a roll call vote since we do have remote members. I'll start with you, Susan.
Absolutely.
Holly?
Yes.
Adam?
Yes.
Amanda?
I
And I am also a yes. Thank you very much to both you and to Mr. Lowell.
I am just thrilled. Even some of the stories he shared of, sometimes children have a hard time getting out of the car in the morning. They just don't want to come
Yeah.
to school. So they'd call, can you come out with Toby? Okay, yep. There comes someone who is reluctant to come to school. Just so many situations where they just have a different touch than humans. As much as we think we're great, sometimes a dog is preferred. So thank you so much. I am thrilled, and I will be thrilled to reach out to Justin. And we would certainly, I'm speaking for him, but we'd love to come visit if you'd like to have us back.
And if you could find out his treat preference.
Okay, that's important.
I will
Okay.
volunteer to send the first box of treats.
Okay, thank you very much. That's wonderful. That's wonderful.
They are both welcome anytime.
Okay, that will do. We will do that.
Lauren, thank you for the
Okay, no, thank you.
really great.
Thank you. It's nice.
I hope that you're going to do something enjoyable, more enjoyable perhaps even than coming to one of our meetings. For the
Well,
rest of
yeah,
the
that's the plan. Summer, you refresh, you rejuvenate. I say that to the teachers, and I do that as well. So the next 2 weeks, I'll be taking a break, being with the family.
Awesome.
While the 19 and 21-year-olds still want to be with us, I have to enjoy that because I know
Yes.
that's short-lived, right? Yes. So thank you
We'll
very
enjoy
much.
that.
You're lucky
Yes.
at 19 and 21, they still do.
I know. So I really am grateful for that.
Great.
I am. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a
you.
good vacation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to
I
circle,
hope the rain is all done.
although my grass appreciates it.
My tomato plant.
I'm going to circle back to new business A, just so I don't skip over it, which was the approval of the designer contract for Hopkins School. Mrs. Rothermere,
Thank you.
Down for you.
So the designer for the addition and renovation to the Hopkins School, we put out a request for qualifications, and that was put out in May, and applications were due in June. And this was also working with our owner's project manager, Vertex. The applicants were all given a chance for a walkthrough. We had 18 vendors request the bid package and 2 submitted. Perkins Eastman Architects and Feingold Alexander Architects. Both vendors were invited for an interview. The selection committee consisted of Tim Person, Director of Building and Grounds, myself, Chris Eberly, and Jeff D'Amico, our owner's project manager, again from Vertex. The references were also checked by Vertex. After the interview, we had long discussions, and Perkins Eastman was selected as the preferred by the selection committee. Vertex was working on a fee proposal at the time of this submission. I did receive the fee proposal this afternoon, and it's again been vetted by our OPM. So the proposal for the fee is $2,100,000. Which again fits within our budget of the $3 million appropriation.
Okay. So that would actually leave a little bit of money that could potentially be used down the road, is that?
Yes, so keep in mind you always need to have a contingency. So the 2.1 will include some of their outside consultants that they need to bring in. They'll do soils testing, HVAC design, things like that. So that'll be included within their fee. But there's also sometimes things that you don't know about, and that's where the contingency comes into play.
But there could potentially be money that stays in the school stabilization account, is that accurate?
This is
Maybe
not,
yes.
so all of the money has been transferred into this account for the fees, the design engineering.
Yep.
Anything that is not spent, we could put back into the stabilization, but the 3 million was the full appropriation. Yeah.
Okay. Other questions? Amanda and Adam, do you guys have any?
I have a couple.
Okay.
Can you guys hear me? I'm with them in chat.
We can hear you.
Okay. Just following on a question, Nancy. Susan, does the $3 million, the appropriation, does that include some amount for the project manager as well? So
Yes.
is it not, it's 2.1 plus we're paying Vertex?
That's correct.
Okay.
So the couple meetings prior, you had approved around 400,000 for the owner's project manager.
Yeah. So, even less flush. So I hope, good luck to them. I hope this goes well. The questions I had probably result from my not understanding the detailed document you put in the packet. And I guess I'm hoping that we get the budget number that they think be required to do this work in time for town meeting.
Yeah, that's
Is that possible? It looked like it was maybe 60% or 90%, and we maybe not 100%, but I wasn't sure, but I'm hoping that that's the case.
The timing of this project was never to be able to have 100% bid documents for the Maytown meeting, but we would have gone through rounds of cost estimating so that we should be able to bring a good number to the Maytown meeting.
Perfect, thank you. And the other question I had was just, I saw a reference to a $40 million construction budget in the response from Perkins in their sort of framing of understanding of the project. I believe that this work will allow us to then actually sort of have a budget. We sort of have a long-term, we have a placeholder number, but I'm assuming that we're building this bottom up. We're not working to the number. 40 million is a big number, so I'm assuming, unless I missed something, that we are going to be sizing this, designing and sizing this as needed, and it may be lower than 40 million.
Yeah, there's not a predetermined number that anybody was given as to what we're building for. Some of the complications and part of what will happen as early as next week is existing conditions. Some of it, even though Hopkins is not that old of a building, will require code upgrades. So whether that's large code upgrades or minor, so those are all the things that are still the unknowns.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay. Other,
Oh, thank you. So if we request, I'll make a motion to request the school committee approve the designer contract for the Hopkins School from Perkins Eastman. Do I need to put in the dollar amount, or can I
You
just...
can say 2.1 million.
For 2.1 million.
Thank you.
okay, thank you. Motion by Holly, is there a second? Second by Susan, and we'll do a roll call. We'll start with you, Susan.
Yes.
Holly?
Yeah.
Adam?
All right.
Amanda? And
Aye.
I am also an aye, and it is unanimous. Thank you very much for putting so much detail together for us. Okay, so that brings us then down into the guidance report for the graduation data for the class of 2023. I'm going to shift this to see if I can, that may be small for you guys to see on the monitor there, but okay.
All right, so before I even begin, I want to thank Lee Greco, who is the Hopkinton High School Guidance Department subject matter leader, for all of the data that you see in this report. She does this every year for us, and this year she's done, I think, a little bit above and beyond with some sort of really nice trend data. So she did a great job. All right, so what you see on the screen there are just sort of those trends over time, so you can look at those numbers for the classes of 2018, 19, 20, 21, and 21, 22, 23. In the class of 23, we had 292 students graduate. Almost 95% of them are going to either a 2 or a 4-year college. 94% are going to a 4-year college, and less than 1% are going to a 2-year college. Less than 1% going to a prep school. 2% of the kids have chosen to take a gap year with a college plan for the following year. And then one of the things that we've noticed that's been a little bit interesting is that, our graduates are tending to look for public universities now, and I think that that's related to cost. That's what we're surmising. So 46.3% of the graduates are choosing a public college, and 16.2% are choosing a Massachusetts public college. Less than 1% is choosing the military, and 1% of our kids, I think it's about 3 students in this class, are going off to full-time employment. So you can sort of see our graduate numbers there. They stay about the same, and it feels like that number of 95-ish% is getting a little bit better. In the year 2020, we dipped down to 90, but we were in the throes of a pandemic at that moment, and I think that probably accounts for that low number in 2020.
Where does the gap year, when did that start becoming a thing?
I don't know. Do you think it was like 5 years ago, maybe 10 years ago? It's hard for me to remember because it all runs together in my mind, but
Well, it seems like it started to become a thing before it was called a thing. So that it's hard to say, you know what I mean, that kids were doing it. but it
Isn't
wasn't.
that kind of a British thing, the gap year?
oh, I don't know.
You know, I actually am a little bit surprised because that the percentage going on to college is so consistent in that 5 years. I mean, really a small, other than the dip during the pandemic, just because there seems like there's been an increased focus on career vocational technical skills.
And the cost of college.
And the
has gone
cost of college has gone up
so much.
so much. Just
There's only
counterintuitive.
one student in this graduating class who is pursuing career education,
Okay.
so not a 2 or a 4-year college.
Yeah. Interesting. No right or wrong answer for
Right.
all kids, but
I feel like it's not. I wonder if that's how that looks at the national level, because I feel like you're right. The number seems to be going down
Right.
elsewhere. Maybe it's just this district is good at helping kids get into places they can afford and that work for them.
Well, that 95% is really high nationally.
It's
yeah. I wonder too if there's any impact on kids who have been able to do dual enrollment and stuff like that, if that makes it maybe kids who might have opted not to be able to pursue college do or what.
We offer a lot of AP classes, so I'm sure
We
that
do.
helps.
And those scores just came out for the seniors.
Did they? I hope that's a happy day too.
Do we know how this data compares to other districts or no?
So I believe that you can look on the DESE website and it will give you the percentage of kids who are going on to 4 and 2-year colleges. I think, however, that I learned from a neighboring superintendent that there are times when the DESE data for that, it's derived from another source, and the other source isn't always accurate. So sometimes it will look like, you only have 68% of your kids who are going off to a 2 or a 4-year college, but I bet we could do a pretty good local analysis,
Yeah, I was just curious to see how our district compares to sort of those around us.
Yeah, I can look at that for you. It'd be interesting. All right, just a little bit of additional information. So 4 of our international students are heading home. So if you were missing a little percentage in there, like what happened to 1%? There you go. And as I said, 1 student is pursuing career education. In May of 2023, 600 students in grades 10 to 12 took 1,247 advanced placement exams. It's a lot of exams. 12 students were commended as National Merit Scholars, and 4 students were named as scholarship finalists. So also great news for those kids.
Awesome.
I also continue to be amazed, and I know just because I have looked at the DESE numbers, that Hopkinton has more kids taking advanced placement exams than almost any other district. Certainly any other district of our size. I know a couple of large districts are ahead in terms of total number, but it is amazing how many students take advantage of that.
And I did take a peek at what it was like in 2022, and I think our number is up maybe even 100 exams from last year.
Wow.
So. All right, so this is sort of a new twist that Lee has prepared for us, and I really love it. So early decision, is it worth it? So what she is telling us is that early applications to the more competitive colleges are on the rise, and she attributes that to kids feeling a lot of pressure to apply early decision. So with those acceptance rates being higher for early decision, kids think, well, this is my big chance to get into, that really competitive college that I want. But what we are realizing is that it's really not in the best interest for some kids, and it really does benefit the college more so than it does the kid, especially if the student has some kind of financial need.
Right, because if they've applied early decision and they're accepted, they have to
Yeah.
accept it, or they risk not being accepted someplace else.
Yes, on the hook.
So, with or without financial aid.
She took a look at competitive majors, and the most competitive majors are, as expected, the more popular majors among our kids. So those are computer science, business, engineering, and nursing. We are also seeing an increase in students hoping to go the pre-med route. So we're seeing a lot of undergraduate majors in biology, chemistry, neuroscience, and biochemistry.
Sorry, Nancy, could you please turn the camera? Thanks.
Waitlisting. With every passing year, we are seeing an increase in the use of waitlists as an enrollment management tool. So again, in favor of the college, not necessarily in favor of the kids. Unfortunately, this gives our kids sometimes a false hope because many colleges have waitlists of over 4,000 applicants and they never actually even get to the waitlist.
Oh.
So they're just kind of keeping kids out there and hopeful. Matriculation trends. Among our students, we're seeing an increased interest in large D1 schools in the South, U Tennessee, U Kentucky, U Alabama, U Miss, and Auburn. And we are also seeing a slight decrease in interest in colleges that are tied to religious orders such as Fordham, Notre Dame, Villanova, Providence, and Assumption. Legacy admissions. Legacy preferences and admissions are diminishing, and that's probably not surprising in the wake of the Varsity Blues college admission scandal in our very recent Supreme Court ruling. So if kids are planning to get to a school because they are a legacy, they may not necessarily get the attention on that they were hoping.
Yeah, I saw there's a lawsuit. Interesting.
College tuition. The high cost of a college education is driving kids probably, very likely, to public colleges. So as we saw in that first slide, 46.3% are going to a public college and 16.2% will be attending a Massachusetts public college. Test optional admissions. This one is super intriguing for me. So there is that continued shift for test optional admissions, and sort of what does that mean? So we've seen an increase in kids taking the SATs and the SATs, but if their score, hoping that their scores will be high, and that might be a tip factor. But if they're not, then kids are just sort of opting out of that. But I think what will happen is kids who are a little bit fearful about taking the SAT, or they take it once and they say, oh, my scores are not what I want them to be. In the olden days, when you needed the SAT, you might go back and take it a second time, or a third time, or a fourth time, or take a prep course. If you're not going to do that now, the College Board will get fewer and fewer and fewer kids taking the SAT multiple times, so it's going to lower their earnings. So we anticipate that they're going to create and push for new AP courses, because that's often what the College Board does. They will start to kind of market their courses and say, we'll train your teachers for free, we'll give you so many free tests for the first year to make sure kids have access to it, and then all of that is stripped away, and they keep making, as we know, testing is an enormously lucrative business.
Does not put the College Board.
AP testing, I know the kids have to pay for every test they take, is that correct?
They do, yes.
So do we have any help for
Yes.
that? Okay. I know, interestingly, I read in Florida, they pay for all the AP tests that kids take.
Oh, wow.
So they have a very high percentage of kiddos that take AP classes, AP.
How much does an AP test cost now?
Not cheap.
They're over 100, right?
Yeah, it is. I feel like it was closer to 2. But I do know that our
200.
I might be wrong. I don't want to have that end up being in the
Yeah.
paper tomorrow, but they are very expensive.
Well, it
What's
replaces
that
college
class
credit,
now?
so right,
right.
it's a bargain if you think about it from a college
it
credit
is.
perspective, but
It
if
is.
you're not doing well on it, it's not a bargain. right?
No, it's not. But I do know that our high school is very proactive in reaching out to
Yeah.
people to.
That's wonderful. Yeah.
The guidance counselors are very good at
Yeah.
making sure that.
The 600 tests.
And they reach out to families who have not registered for kids to find out if it's a financial issue.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So that they can make it more accessible.
And just to clarify, the college credit, these older colleges aren't offering some credit for the course and promoting early graduation, which used to be something that was available to kids. Now they'll let you skip over the entry-level course and move to a more
So you're skipping
challenging
gen ed.
course?
Yeah.
Yes,
Which
but you-
sometimes isn't a good idea.
which sometimes is not a great idea. Yes.
That's too bad because
That
when I was in
entry-level.
high school, I could replace like the first year, my freshman year was
Yes.
replaced with credit, so I get to go in as a sophomore. But that's kind of a bummer. That's kind of
Some
moved
do.
away.
My daughter, who just graduated
Yeah.
from college, had a number of credits that she was able to take from her AP classes in Hopkinton, and that counted towards her
Oh, that's wonderful.
total number of credits in
So I guess
college.
college
Depends.
dependent.
Yeah.
As did my son,
Yeah.
who graduated.
Excellent. Well, thank you.
All right, so this is your SAT data, the average score, and you know that the scores range from 200 to 800. So in the evidence-based reading and writing, our average score was 615, and in the math it was 632. So interesting that the math is a little bit higher than the ELA. The combined, so the average of the combined scores is 1,247. So, and the number of students who took the SAT, 215. So,
Interesting, out of a
Wow.
graduating class of over 300, I think, right?
292, did we say? Just under 300, but
Yeah,
yes,
okay.
yeah.
Sorry, Carol, can you repeat? I can't read the slide. What was the score? What was the math and ELA scores
The mean,
for SAT?
mean SAT ELA was 615, and the mean math was 632.
Very good.
The mean total, 1,247.
Thanks.
And with the ACTs, only 40 students tested. The English mean was 26.8, math 26.1, reading 26.2, and science 25.9. So the average composite scored 25.6. So I kind of feel like those are a little more in sync with each other. Do you know what I mean?
Only 40 kids.
Yeah, significantly less popular.
Yes. All right, the impact of ChatGPT. Everyone is sort of watching what's going to happen. Are we still going to ask kids to write college essays? No one has an answer to that yet, but it may really upend that traditional college essay, which is pretty interesting. Some of the suggestions for replacement right now are either interviews or video interviews or portfolios.
Interesting.
I get a little weirded out by all the AI stuff and the ChatGPT. I have seen people put things out that were put out by ChatGPT that sound very much like something a person would have.
And the fact that I just had seen something with the affirmative action decision where they were talking about that college essay is going to become more and more important. And I, of course, am going like ChatGPT. It's like, no, kid, those college essays and how many I've read over my life, you know. Portfolios are good.
Portfolios are good, yes. I mean, it gives you a much better snapshot. But can you imagine reviewing a portfolio as opposed to
Reading an essay.
reading the essay that you can get through very
Of
quickly?
course, and again, I immediately thought about Legally Blonde, and she did when I saw something about a video. To get into Harvard, she did a video. Just kind of thought,
I can remember having heard from an admissions person attending an admission session for a college with one of my kids that the number of minutes they spend on each application is surprisingly low.
Oh, yes,
Yeah,
it is.
so I would think
Bam,
going to a
bam.
portfolio would make it more challenging.
Yes.
Okay. Questions?
Thank you.
Yeah.
That was good information.
Well, we should be thanking Lee because it's all
Thank
good
you.
Yes,
data.
did an excellent
Please send
job.
her a thank you.
What a wonderful snapshot of the senior class.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm surprised how that the number that 46% selected public school or a public, but only 16% decided to stay in state, which has a significant going out of state has a significant impact on other pieces of the college expense puzzle. And they're all wanting to go south. Warmer climes.
So that moves us into the next item, which is.
Sorry, Nancy.
Oh, yep, go ahead. Oh, wait a minute. I have something odd popped up on my screen that doesn't really belong there. Okay, did you have a question?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for the data. Every year this report gets more informative, and I love hearing the professional point of view from guidance because there's data and then there's, what they're seeing in the guidance office. So I really appreciate some of the more qualitative information. I'm curious, and I can look into this, or we could talk about it offline because I didn't ask you in advance, but I've been kind of tracking like the male-female split on things like taking of AP exams and college decisions and so forth. So I would be interested. I know there has been sort of a slow but noticeable steady decline in percentage of our AP tests that are taken by our males versus females. They're steadily on the incline and in the majority. No specific meaning is being ascribed to that, but I'm just curious, how, if our boys are still as engaged in our AP courses and how they're doing, and if we're tracking that at all.
All right. Yeah, I'd be happy to talk about it. It's interesting where, and I know we've had conversations about if we look at NAEP scores or nationwide scores and global scores, our boys in terms of literacy are just not where the girls are until they get to like a particular age. Then they kind of catch up a little bit. But for the elementary levels, our boys lag for sure.
You're right. The AP exams are different though because they span so many topics.
Yes.
So I think it's kind of interesting. It just is going to be interesting to kind of watch some of these trends, whether it's SATs or APs or MCAS, kind of put together. Do they tell a story, or is this were some of the declines temporary, or things sort of thinning out? I don't think I have all the data for last year, so my trends stop in 2021. So I'll take a look, but it'd be interesting if there are any insights. We don't need another report, but if there are any insights that guidance would feel worth sharing, it would be nice to hear those as well.
All right. That moves us then into the superintendent's goals. I'm going to turn you guys to see if you can see it. It's hard for me to see, and I'm closer, but
Yes, Georgette did share an electronic copy with you, so you probably have that on your machine if you. But I also brought you. I did bring you hard copies. So better someone.
fabulous. Thank you.
My pension paper.
All right, and just so you're aware, this is sort of draft number one, and I'm sure that we'll revisit this on the 27th, and then maybe even once more. Typically, we do this in August, but we realized that we had a little bit of time at this meeting to look at them for a first glance, and so that's what we'll do tonight. So the first goal is a student achievement goal. In the 22-23 school year, I introduced mathematics student growth and achievement goal. And after a year's work, I think that the goal should be extended for a second year to ensure really cohesive math instruction from K to 12, but even to continue to look at the grade 6 issue. That was one of the promises from last year, is that we really think hard about whether or not to formally level math at grade 6, or if we should just work in kind of that same kind of differentiation model that they would use in the elementary setting. So process benchmarks. Currently, STAR Math is taken by all of our students in grades 1 to 10 3 times a year, and that data is now triangulated with kids' scores on MCAS and, as available, any other local assessments. Establish a math instructional team. We started that very briefly this spring, and the folks involved in that are our Director of Mathematics K to 5, Shelley Moran, our high school mathematics, middle school math CTL Kathy Anasaskis, and the high school math SML Carla Crisafulli, our instruction what was I here? The assistant superintendent for curriculum instruction and assessment, and the secondary leadership team members as appropriate. So anybody really who is kind of involved in math, K to 12, and then the middle school, high school, and maybe even Hopkins leadership teams. Analyze student growth and achievement math scores disaggregated by subgroup. Present this information to the math instructional team as well as to the school committee. I'd love to bring some math data to you all. Use common assessments, K to 5, the problem solving has been identified as an area of growth. Continue to monitor K to 5 guaranteed and viable curriculum to ensure its efficacy in meeting all students' needs, and differentiate instruction at the K to 5 levels as appropriate. We are doing new things with K to 2. We piloted it last year. ST Math will be in all classrooms grades K to 3, and Beast Academy, which is kind of an enrichment program that the kids are very into, will be in grades 2 to 5. Work with the K to 5 math director, special education directors, and teacher leaders to set goals for all students who are not reaching math benchmarks and plan for necessary interventions and remediation. And then the focus from last year is really to keep going with that grade 6 and either differentiate the curriculum and its delivery to ensure greater depth of study and rigor, or I should say, or establish formal math leveling at grade 6. The decision's going to have to be made by January of 2024, and that will mean exposing grade 6 learners who present with readiness to a pre-algebra curriculum.
How many students don't, I maybe shouldn't ask this question. How many students don't meet their benchmarks?
I think about 15%.
I would say somewhere around there.
Yeah. We think around 15%. We'd have to go back and take a look.
Just curious.
Yeah, and you know, sort of the disparity at the elementary level. I mean, you'll have some kids who are far exceeding the benchmark. And to the elementary school teachers' credit, they have all of those children under one roof, and they're able to differentiate to really meet the needs of all learners kind of where they are. A math lesson at the elementary level is pretty impressive, really. And you want every one of those kids accessing a grade level standard. You know, so you wouldn't want your third graders to be working on second grade standards. You want them to be able to get to those third grade standards. All right, I will move to goal 2, which is also a student achievement goal. And I talked to our new Director of Student Services, Abby Hanscom, about this today. As you know, we've been doing a lot of work with special education at the middle school. In particular, I want to think hard about the co-taught classroom. On one of the very last days of school, we had a professional development provider come in and do some work on the co-teaching model. What does that look like in a classroom? You know, when you can be talking about stations teaching or parallel teaching, and how to provide that kind of professional learning to ensure that that's happening across the board in our classrooms. So those benchmarks are to carefully place students into the COTOC classroom based on students' unique learning profiles. We began that this spring. I'm really hopeful that when teachers are working with kids in COTOC classrooms, they're going to be able to go in there and say, okay, here's a lesson plan that is differentiated, say at 2 levels or 3 levels, and we're targeting the instruction for each of those kids because we've carefully placed the kids according to profile. Work with the assistant superintendent, the district's director of student services, the secondary special education director of curriculum instruction and assessment, the middle school director of ELA, and the middle school administrators to grow co-teaching efficacy. Provide professional development for teachers that includes exposures to the co-teaching model, methodology for developing co-taught lessons with limited planning time, and modeling how to differentiate. And a lot of that PD, I think, can be done sort of in-house, but we will also very willing to continue to bring in someone who is really renowned in the work. Ensure that lesson plans are geared to meet grade level standards for all students. Meet with the middle school principal, Matt Lefebvre, to assess progress on co-teaching professional development and its implementation. Once monthly, conduct walkthroughs with the new director of student services and/or the new 6 to 12 special education director of curriculum instruction and assessment and/or Mr. Lebrad. And discuss what was observed during those walkthroughs and determine any next step for curriculum development or professional development for our educators. At the end of the year, I'd like to solicit some feedback from the teachers to think about the ways in which all of that placement work played out. You know, was it helpful or was it not helpful? We keep saying our teachers are working super hard, but it's really hard for them to do what they need to do in those co-taught settings because of sort of the big range of, you know, student needs and, you know, their ability to access the curriculum. So if kids are better profiled, then we have a better chance of saying this is what's targeted and necessary for a smaller group of kids. So we're hoping it works. And then really take a look at our kids' growth and achievement scores and review them, and hopefully we'll be seeing, I guess, increased scores in those co-taught classrooms. All right, professional practice and district improvement. Last year, my goal in this realm was to begin the work of aligning and merging our work in DEI, SJ, culturally responsive practices, social emotional learning. And again, I think we need to continue this work with some, you know, new benchmarks. So we have had Black Print Consulting with us for 3 years through DESE, and they are now finished with us, but they've left us with a beautiful list of recommendations. And we have also been introduced to the CRIOP, and we've talked about it a lot at the end of last year, but we talked about it in the sense that our administrators were becoming familiar with that tool. And now all of our 5 buildings should have a CRIOP goal as part of their school improvement goal, which means that the CRIOP, which are culturally responsive indicators of and observable practices, so you get to go into a classroom and see what's happening. Hopefully, those things will now be trickling down into our classrooms. And, you know, some of our teachers have incredible proficiency. You know, some have more of a learning curve, but it will be nice to see that CRIOP actually manifest in classrooms where last year it lived at the administrative level. And I think, you know, when I started so many years ago, 5 years ago, we had conversations about how is this going to look when it finally gets into a classroom. And that was back in the day when we talked about it in terms of diversity, right? And I don't necessarily know that we mean diversity. What we really want is our teachers being culturally responsive in their dealings with family and their approach to instruction. And the CRIOP does all of those things for us with its multiple pillars.
What's the P stand for again?
Practices.
Okay.
Observable practices
Thank you.
are the OP.
Education is like the biggest use of acronyms of any industry out there.
The worst.
No, it's the only one we know. I mean,
Okay.
if we were in engineering, there are probably 1,000 there too.
Yeah.
We love an acronym.
Still continuing with the goal of growing CPAC and LPAC. The first of the benchmarks, I think, will talk about establishing a really solid plan with Jen Super and Abby Hanscom to work with those 2 organizations. And so we can go up to the top. And the first of those process benchmarks is to take the structural review feedback from Blackprint and really get our own statement of cultural proficiency out there working this year, and, you know, as I said, getting things right into the classroom. Working with the Director of Student Services and the Director of English Language Acquisition, Equity and Access to develop plans for CPAC and LPAC. The SEL Director will work with teachers and counselors in grades 4 to 12 to ensure that the HSA, Holistic Student Assessment, is administered at least twice a year, and to ensure that the harvested data is used to help students access curriculum. And I think that's really important. We have that data, and it's, you know, put into the pyramid in much the same way as like MTIS or RTI information is. So when you get to the top, there's a very small percentage, but those are our students who are in the red, and we now get to see who those kids are and how to best support them. In ways of self-regulation, social interaction, interpersonal communication, conflict resolution, all of that we're hoping will actually get woven into lesson plans. As I've said, the CRI-UP will be in every building school improvement plan. Blackprint recommended that we develop an equity tool for decision making, so there are criteria, and as you as an administrator or a classroom teacher or anyone in the district is making a hiring decision, any kind of a decision, how to deal with a child, that equity tool will help you to like ask questions like who's at the table, is everyone who is a stakeholder at the table, if not, why not? So it does a really nice job of ensuring equity in our decision making. That's brand spanking new. We're still working on it. The four of us, one of the people from Blackprint, Mr. Lebrad, Jen Suker, and I are all presenting on Hopkinton's use of the CRI-UP at the MASS conference next week. We will continue our trial program around SEL with Yale University and the Elmwood School. Our K-5 PBIS work will launch into year 3. We're still getting support there. We will continue to train faculty and staff in restorative practices. Last year we did most of our administrative team, all of our administrative team 6 to 12. We had the SMLs and CTLs, or selected teachers, who were trained, and then we started to throw it out there on a volunteer basis. So any teacher who was interested, we would pay them for their time, and they could come in and get the restorative practices training. And the beauty of that was that we had a $100,000 grant. There was a competitive grant. We applied for it, we got it, and so we were able to do so much training with that money. That training has to continue through this year. I'll have Jen Suker still work with parent and community outreach and working with HR to continue to diversify the workforce in all of our Hopkinton Public Schools roles. Another district improvement plan, and this is again related to enrollment growth. It fits in nicely with the district improvement plan, which I think you see at the end of your packet. So we are in a place now where it's really critical to educate the community about what you saw in the superintendent's report tonight about the Elmwood school needs and the Hopkins school needs. And that's going to have to continue from now until the November special town meeting, talking about enrollment, our academic needs, our SEL needs. And when we were having conversations with our OPM this afternoon and with our design team, one of the things they pointed out that was really super important is that while we are making these reductions to construction costs, there are no reductions to the academic programming. And I think that that's something we're really proud of here in Hopkinton. We have incredible academic programming, but we don't necessarily spend zillions and zillions of dollars on our buildings. We make, incredibly great buildings, and they're great spaces for our kids to learn, and we certainly furnish all of the technology and the furniture that's necessary for great education. But I think we're really fiscally prudent with our money. So while the construction aspects of this work are going to require a partnership with Mrs. Rothermick, our Assistant Superintendent for Finance and Operations, as well as our Director of Facilities, we are going to need to really think about educational needs, and I think that that's part of the work that will be going forward this year. So the process benchmarks are working with Mrs. Rothermick and Mr. Person to continue to educate the community on these building projects, continue to monitor enrollment growth and make sure that we're articulating that very clearly, modify with the school committee the 5-year plan to accurately reflect our physical plant needs in accordance with projected enrollment, Work with the ESBC2, Vertex, and Perkins Eastman to ensure that both projects, the Elmwood replacement and Hopkins addition, stay on time and on budget. Create and pass a budget that carefully analyzes the need for increased personnel. We're going to start seeing that. With all of the additional kids we have in our district, we are going to need to have, I don't know, more teachers, more school adjustment counselors, more building administrators. So we have to think very hard about what that's going to look like. So that's across every building, grade level, discipline, and service. And then over the next 2 years' time, we need to review and revise the grade 2 to 4 curricula so that when we move into that new building, the opportunities of the new building are reflected in the curriculum documents. And this was something that the MSBA actually requires of us as well. All right, and then the last one is a brand spanking new professional practice goal, and it derives from one of the indicators that I was working on last spring. One of those indicators came right from the rubric, and it's the shared vision goal. And I think in the conversation that we had about my indicators, we've really talked a lot about the shared vision goal and decided that the shared vision indicator, and decided it should probably be a formal goal. So what shared vision does is it really analyzes the experience of a kid in our schools, and it takes a look at them by the time they've made that sort of K or pre-K to 12, or maybe even the 18 to 22 program. After they've had that experience, are they prepared for what lies ahead? Are they prepared for college and career, for civic engagement, to contribute to a community, and to be responsible citizens? That language comes right out of the superintendent rubric. So we currently have a researcher, Dr. Judy Martin, who is getting information from the class of 2023. So that will be her sort of foundational class. She'll carry it out over 5 years and continue to communicate with those kids. And we'll lose some to attrition, but it will be really nice to get information from them. Did your Hopkinton experience prepare you for kind of life after graduation? And we like to think that we're doing a really good job with that, but for the most part, we're dealing with anecdotal data.
Have you ever done this before?
I have,
Getting data from past?
when I worked at Westboro High School, I was there for a decade, and Judy Martin did the same 5-year study there for us, which is how, I got back in touch with her and asked her to do the work here.
Where I used to teach, they did some kind of like keeping in touch with so far back of to kind of get a sense of
That kind of 5-year longitudinal.
Yeah.
Yes, and I thought the work that she did for us was really interesting.
I would be curious to know what some of the tools that she's using in those surveys are. I'm really interested in like the validity and reliability of tools. What's the Chromback alpha of those tools?
Sure.
So just throwing it out there.
Okay. Yeah, I think we actually have a copy of that survey now, so I would be happy to share it. Periodically survey parents and students regarding their learning and social emotional experiences in the Hopkinton Public School. Arrange and engage a district-wide climate team whose primary role is to assess morale in our schools, and I know that was one process benchmarks for last year that only got about halfway hit, so we'll get to that this year. Use a portion of all of our admin council meetings to grow our group as a team. I know I've had that one out there, but I think that it's just so important, and now we have about 5 new people on that team. So we'll meet bi-monthly with the middle school and high school counselors. This is entirely new for me, to sit with them and to talk about trends that they're seeing and student engagement, and really review the HSA data. Conduct case studies, if students are willing to do that, with kids who have chosen a non-2 or non-4-year college option, so kids who might be going to full-time employment or career education. I think it's really important to hear their voices, because we hear a lot from our kids who are college-bound. Reviewing the civics curricula for grades 8 and 11, and to continue to work with Jen Suker to ensure that our most diverse students' needs are being met. So those are the 5. I know people are wondering what has happened to that disciplinary literacy goal. The work is still continuing. I would be happy to add it in here if you want to see it there. I just took it out because you know what it looks like, but that is still absolutely going on, and I think that we are. It's going to be very interesting this year to look at some of our middle school and high school MCAS data. It's going to be super interesting to, maybe dive into some of that SAT, ELA, and, that kind of data, because I'm not really worried about our kids who are taking like AP Lit and AP Lang, because those are our kids who are sort of typically very high achievers in reading and writing. It's kids who might be at grade level or who might be a little bit, those kids who struggle. How will the disciplinary literacy bolster their writing all across disciplines? So,
Are there questions? I'm looking at the computer, but you guys probably can't see my head, Amanda and Adam, to see if you guys had anything to start. Okay. Go ahead.
I can't see Adam on my screen because I look it up. Question on goal 3. I guess what I was wondering, I love the CRIOP work. My question is, in practice, I would love for everyone who gets a paycheck from the district to have some exposure to culturally responsive practices, because we're working so hard on this. And for most of our like after-school activities, those are generally run by teachers. So I think in that context, the CRIOP work will carry through to after school. I do wonder and hope that there's a way to bring the culturally responsive values and practices that we're developing to athletics and all, like any sort of after school program that is run potentially by somebody who's not getting it as a teacher or a member of the community already. Because we do bring in outside folks, and it's not just highlight athletics, but that is a place where a whole lot of our students engage in a setting that is still a school setting, and our coaches are wonderful, but these are new practices for everybody. And I just would love to see us fold that group in. I know we have a new athletic director, we haven't met yet, but just food for thought. If you're kind of iterating on your goals and could figure out if there's a way to put that in there, that would be something that'd be interesting for me.
Yeah, I think that's very easy to do. And I think with our athletic director, we are using a very veteran athletic director to serve as his mentor, so, and from a neighboring district, so I think that might be something they could work on together.
Nice. Okay. And the only other, I guess, real question I had, because in your voiceover, it made a lot of things clear to me, but I know we have, as you mentioned, a lot of new administrators, and I know that you did say that you're going to be building the team, so I guess I endorse that effort. It takes some intentional effort to bring a group of people who haven't worked together before together, as you well know, so I'm glad to see that in there, and if it needs to be a little bit bigger, I would support that too, because we are bringing in a bunch of new team members for you. But thank you for this.
Anyone else?
I had a question for the school committee to consider. During the last evaluative process, we had talked about considering a district overview, district evaluation. I know you had included it in your goals for school committee this year. DESE allows us for well-established superintendents to do evaluations every other year. I think these are great goals or excellent goals, but I'm wondering if we can take like a level up, and as opposed to doing a full superintendent evaluation, if we can move toward a more district focus, because I'm afraid with the ESBC coming up, our 5-year capital plan coming up very quickly on budget season, a superintendent evaluation and a district evaluation, that we might be burdening ourselves, and there's like a lot of things to discuss, I think, at the district level that Dr. Kavanaugh has highlighted within her evaluation goals. So, like, I don't know. That's a thought I had. I know I had brought it up previously in the previous iteration of the same conversation. Since this is the beginning of the process, I didn't know if it would be something the board would want to consider, or if, we want to do it how we've done it, and obviously the board decides. I just thought it might be something that we could have a different focus on our conversations, so that Dr. Kavanaugh is not being held responsible for every, gap that we find or everything that we want to discuss. I want to make sure that, like, we're talking about it in a general sense and not in regard to the superintendent's evaluation. If that makes sense, and maybe I did not make sense, but Desi allows it. I think it's something like, just me. I thought it would be worthy of consideration, but I speak for myself and not the board.
I think you articulate that very well, and I think there's a lot of good stuff that we could explore with that.
Yeah.
I would like to throw that as a separate agenda item for
That's-
next month, if that is
That would be-
agreeable with.
That'd be wonderful.
Because I think it allows us time to do some of that larger, the 360 look at things, and to look at the district in a different way.
Yeah. But I'm very, very mindful of the public scrutiny and that comes with a superintendent-focused evaluation, and I do not want these things to be conflated. I want to ensure that we are looking at it from a perspective of the district as opposed to a person within the district. I
agree with that. I would like to have like a fuller conversation on that at our next July meeting, if that works for you.
It's at the will of the board. It doesn't need to work for me.
We can have a discussion, though.
But thank you.
I think it's a worthwhile discussion to have.
Thank you.
Nancy, is that something that MASC can talk to us about? Like we should maybe have some
Yes,
instruction or coaching from them?
I think we could definitely reach out to MASC as well, and to look at kind of all the different angles we have, looking kind of pros, cons, and look for a best practice for, it's not just looking at 1 year, but looking at 2 years potentially.
Thank you.
You froze there. Oh, there you go. Does that make sense to you? I would shoot to do it for the next meeting, but it might not be until August, taking into account the fact that everybody at MASC may not be sitting around waiting for
I think they are.
us to reach out.
Yeah,
In
no, I think
summer.
it's a good conversation. Yeah, I just didn't know where Holly's done some research, but I thought maybe we can bring in someone to help us understand what a district evaluation looks like.
Yeah. And potentially we could bring somebody to work with us at our August, kind of our workshop style meeting that we're having in the day in August, if we want to pursue that as well. Is that more what you mean, having somebody, MASC, like actually come to us and kind of give us what it looks like, or what it has looked like with other districts that have taken that kind of a route?
Yeah, if we talk at this meeting and we want to learn more, maybe bring them in or something. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to turn this back so it's not just awkward with you guys looking at me.
She was looking at me.
Oh, but now they can stare at the chairs.
Yeah. Okay, so this, we're going to continue on. It says there's a motion, but we're not actually looking for a motion at this point. Okay, so then.
I'm sure we just want some time to digest.
It is a lot to
it's a lot.
digest. Particularly, we don't normally look at it quite this early, as you had indicated.
Yes. So there's plenty of time.
Was impressed with the level of depth always that you bring with the documents. It's not like a casual thing that you put out in an afternoon's work. All right, so want to circle back to liaison roles, which I know we had some conversation about that at our last meeting. I know that one of the things, I do feel like we sort of try to strong arm people into doing the ESBC too. And I think that might be something that you would be looking to potentially allow somebody else the opportunity to.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a mom of little
Yeah.
kiddos, and they're already angry at me right now.
You're not selling it when you say it like that.
No, my small children,
Yes.
because I can't do night meetings. And I serve on other committees and boards in the community, and
And it is a large ask, and
yeah. And I
in
want it
the
to have
evening.
the attention and time it deserves, because it's essential
Yep.
in so many ways. So I don't know if anybody else has the ability to do that.
So is there somebody else who would like to be the ESBC2 alternate? If there is, we can go ahead and vote that now. If there's not, we can also hold that as a placeholder while people think about it more in depth. Going to allow for an awkward silence.
I mean, I could do it in the evenings, which is when they meet.
It's Tuesday evenings at 6 o'clock.
So most Tuesdays at 6, I could do. I can also watch because you're the primary.
That is correct.
It is an important, yeah. So I don't want to take it from someone else who would want to do. It's an important role, but if no one else has the bandwidth, then I could be your alternate.
And I certainly think
Jumping in because it is a long project. The project will continue after I probably don't continue in this role, so it is maybe a good place for someone else. But if there's no one else, I can do it.
And it is certainly something that, as the alternate, could be followed. I think it is important to follow along with what's going on, but you could follow from home, from the meetings, and then you'd be up to speed and ready to, you or anybody else who wanted to jump in, to be able to come in person and vote if I wasn't able to make a meeting. Is there... I don't hear anybody else jumping in to want to do it. So are you comfortable with us voting on that, or do you want to think about that until the next meeting, Amanda?
Is anybody on the fence and thinking I just want to look at my calendar?
I don't see anybody on the fence.
I think we had this same issue when we discussed it the last time.
I think someone once told me that to be wary when the time came for committee assignments. A wise woman warned me about the hard work with these committee assignments.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm putting your name down here in pen, Amanda. So in that said, Holly, because that frees up a little bit of space on the liaison things, is there something that you would be interested in?
Well, I hope to serve on policy because I have a pretty extensive background in policy, but I am also mindful of the policy, the history that is going to come forward with whoever is serving on policy. They may need some of that institutional knowledge as it goes beyond my tenure, right? But I would love to be able to do policy because I have a strong, boring background in it. Yeah. But again, I also have what's the Tadaro something.
Although that one does not, may or may not meet this year.
I feel like that's not a real committee, but that's fine.
It is a real committee, it's just they may or may not meet this year. When they meet, but I don't think there's
That's not your turf committee, is it?
No, Adam wanted
Adam
turf.
is now the turf.
Oh, Adam wanted turf.
Yeah.
He's the turf guy.
Turf, I bet.
Okay.
But this is always also something we can push for when people are in person, because I think.
Okay, so do we want to put a pin in it, as they say?
I like pens. Pens are nice.
Put a pin in it and consider that voting on this the next time, with the note that you definitively would like to come off of the ESBC2. Amanda is willing to go on it. You would like to go on policy, and
It's
so we can,
possible.
if that's possible, we can have that
If not,
conversation.
it's fine.
Okay.
So Nancy, I need to get sworn in for that, right?
You do need to get sworn in for that, yep. So you can go visit our friend Connor Deegan.
I can do that on Monday. I won't be back till Monday, but I can do it then.
Okay, and the other ones, I know the Marathon Fund, I think, also has to be sworn in, and as well.
I don't think I think somebody else, I think Adam might have taken that as well.
Okay, and I believe you have to be sworn in for Irvine Todaro as well.
I did not do that.
Wait a minute, Marathon Fund?
Yes, did you take that,
I
Susan?
think
feel like
I
haven't
see my
taken it.
name
Yep.
here.
Oh, boy.
Yep,
Get sworn in.
And I have to get sworn in for that.
Yeah. Just go to the
Yes,
town hall
so
and
you-
tell them.
right.
And
Take the oath. Okay. All right, so we will finish that conversation in person, when we're all in person. And then I've heard a couple of future agenda items potentially tossed out here that I have made note of. Are there others that people want to bring up?
Yeah, I had a request from the community of I don't even know how to say it. So I wrote myself a note so that I would know how to say it, but I did not write good notes. So there we go. A budget. So there have been community members that have asked me specific questions about how much money do we get in grants? How much money do we get in aid? How will we build up from ground zero? Where are we starting from? Zero, I would say to that. But when we get our budget, when we go through our budget process, right, we get kind of the additions and subtractions. We don't get necessarily the whole overview. So I didn't know if part of, like I had requested earlier, a budget debrief, a budget process debrief. I was wondering if we could take a more like full circle view of our budget, because I see these questions coming up again and again. I saw a conversation about, well, what's about all that COVID money we got? I'm assuming it went to COVID protocol, but there's questions out there, like they see money in the news and they assume that that's what we have. I want to help. I'm hopeful that we can help the community understand what our budget looks like and how we get at the numbers that we get at when we are going through the budget process, because I think that would be very helpful for the current conversation about our operating budget versus our, big budget versus.
It'd be
our-
helpful for.
And yeah. So did I? I did not.
Yeah, no, you did a great job articulating that. I'm thinking a couple of things. One is the piece about the grants. So that's a report piece that could come back, but as part of the conversation.
Yeah.
And then I'm thinking this is a good way to do something before we actually move into the budget. A great way for the community to understand.
A lot of
I
it
would
is
think
misunderstood, it feels like.
it is. I think that the zero base is one piece of it. But I think certainly we could have a conversation to help illuminate that.
Because it seems like the community kind of sees, like, when we go to the budget at town meeting, we say, this is what we're adding to last year, and these are the things that we're covering in this addition. And some people have asked me, like, what happened? What's all the other stuff? Like, I don't know.
All right, so conversation, part debrief and part full circle view to help us get ready for the FY25 budget. That sounds so far away, and yet it's so close to becoming a conversation.
Thank you. That's it.
Okay.
Yes, like 2 months away.
Be a perfect opportunity for media kids to do a Schoolhouse Rock version of how the budget is built. I mean,
Yeah. It might be a nice thing to do ahead of when we have the select board joint meeting with appropriations, where we talk about the budget message and we talk about kind of what the process is going to be.
Yeah.
So,
It would be a fun meeting.
did you say fun?
I said fun.
Yeah.
I mean it.
All right. That then brings us into items by consensus.
As superintendent, I recommend the school committee approve the items by consensus as outlined in your agenda.
Okay. Is there a motion for that?
Yeah. So moved.
Okay. Motion by Holly, second by Susan. We'll do a roll call starting with Susan.
yes.
Sorry, Nancy.
Oh, yep.
Sorry. Hate to interject items by consensus with the finish line right like on the horizon, but I asked Georgette if she could annotate the June minutes, because it says that I'm there by phone, but I did arrive in person. I just want
Yep.
to put arrival time in there. And the other question I have was, did we vote the liaison roles in June?
We did vote them in, yes, we did vote them in June.
So I think that's maybe not accurately,
Okay, so let's pull the June 15th, it's June 15th, right? The June 15th
Yeah.
minutes out of the items by consensus? Does that make sense to you?
Perfect.
And then bring them back
Yeah.
as part of the next meeting's items by consensus. So
Thanks.
I would seek an amended motion to approve the items by consensus, with the exception of item K, which is the regular meeting minutes of June 15th, 2023, if that is acceptable as a friendly amendment.
So moved.
And a second then by Susan? Okay, and then we will do a roll call, starting with you, Susan.
Yes.
Holly?
Yes.
Amanda?
Aye.
Adam?
Aye.
I am also an aye, and those pass, and then that would bring us into adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion by Holly, second by Susan. We'll go by roll call, starting with you, Susan.
Yes.
Holly?
Yes.
Amanda?
Aye.
Thank
She
you.
already-
Adam?
Aye.
And I am also an aye, and we are adjourned at 9:08. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And I will see everybody, if I don't see you before, at our July 27, 2023 regular meeting, which will be here at HCAM at 7 p.m.
We don't have one on the 20th. 27th is our next meeting.
The 27th is our next meeting, correct? Yep.
July,
When is our
okay.
next listening session for
So
ESBC?
we need to have that.
Oh, offline.
Yeah,
Okay.
we
I
got to
didn't
figure
know.
that out, because there is also going to be a July 18th forum that
Yeah.
ESBC.
Through the ESBC,
Yes,
right?
so I think we want to figure timing around that
Yeah.
and not overshadow.
Thank you.
Excellent. All
And
right.
we're doing a daytime meeting on August 24th, goal setting and junk like that.
So we are doing a, I believe it's August 24th, but we also have an evening meeting on August 3rd.
Yes.
Okay.
Just getting my life ordered here because I'm going to Pennsylvania
Yeah.
this
Excellent.
month.
All right, thank you all, and have a good night.
Okay.
Thank you.